whatever period length. Right now I'm doing 20 minutes, and it's up or down a certain amount of gamma capture volatility as we measure it um, from the simple moving average. And I'm comparing it right now to the Bollinger Bands. So you see the Bollinger Bands are the red and the green at the bottom. And for example, two Bollinger Band widths is two standard deviations from the simple moving average. And that means that the stock price should stay within the bands like 95% of the time, because it's two standard deviations away. Um, and our gamma capture bands are hoping to tell you something similar, but we're hoping that they are more reliable than Bollinger Bands because they're smoother. So they're not overreacting to price jumps like as you see here with 17. This really bloated the Bollinger Bands, which traders are using as a signal, and that can lead them to um, not trading as much as they would like to and not being as profitable as they would like to. So our gamma capture bands are a lot smoother and a lot more consistent and reliable than the Bollinger Bands are. So this is what I've been working on lately. And Louis, you saw before that the my simple moving average is not exactly the same as the simple moving average of the Bollinger Bands, but I changed the period length and now it is. So you see that yellow line and now it'll disappear when I change the period length to 20 because it's covered by ours.
I see. Yeah.
And I sent you this in a text, but you said we shouldn't have to multiply by a big number, like I'm doing 6 here. But yeah, that's because I'm using minute data right now. And um, as we saw when I was doing the Python stuff, that when we're using bigger intervals of data than a second, gamma capture is way lower than it should be. So that's just what's going on here. I'm having to multiply by this 6 or a big number to account for the minute data not getting as many barrier crossings as it should.
Yes.
So that'll go away when I get a paid tier and have access to that second data.
Mhm. And I did, yeah, that looks excellent. And I did send it a follow-up email with the time intervals. As the time intervals
Mhm.
shrink, you have more data points, and then you capture more crossings, and then your volatility goes higher. So we have to kind of set ourselves on a standardized way of doing that. So we're not always relying on, the time interval to have it be the deterministic factor for what the gamma capture volatility is, but that's something for a later discussion.
I think at least with the bands, I could make it a function of like seconds per bar. So it could be like, if your time interval is bigger, we can multiply by a bigger number just to make the bands look more reasonable. That would be that would be something that would not be too hard to do.
And I wonder, and we saw this issue in NinjaTrader by loading in the second data series no matter what. I'm wondering if there's a way in TradingView to like guarantee what uh what the because you need either one of two things. You either need the person to load in the second data and for your gamma capture bands to understand that they loaded in the second data somehow. I don't know how that works in TradingView, or a way to guarantee that you're loading in the second data at least within your indicator. And NinjaTrader lets you do the latter by always loading in the second data, so I know what data I'm using. So the flexibility has to come in one of those two places. I'm not sure which one it offers, but I'm sure it offers one of them. It must. So, right, does that make sense? Like what you need in order to like have a consistency among different time intervals, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm on my desktop or my laptop, so I can't share my NinjaTrader stuff because it only works on Windows. But good progress on that stuff. And we also have the gamma capture bands, which are looking very similar on second data. We also have the at the money straddle points, like the indicators for the different hours. And then we also have the one, I'm not sure if Kaylee showed it on TradingView, the one that just shows what the current gamma capture volatility is based off of the 30-day rolling, the 30-day average
Mhm.
intraday volatility.
So
Yeah.
Casey, I do want to ask,
Mhm.
would you say the the straddle stuff on NinjaTrader is final, and have you done the 30-day historical stuff yet?
The 30-day historical stuff. So I'm loading in a different data series now that I think is just representative of it. And
Yeah.
once I think I have live data, I'll be able to just plug that in. I'm sure that'll have an implementation issue or two, but I think at least mechanically that part is finalized.
Right.
But we'll see again once I plug and play the correct values and not something that I think is representative of it. But hopefully, at the very least, it's a small change from what I have now if it doesn't work just directly with what I have.
Hmm.
So, but I think the other issues that we were talking about the past week are finalized. The only other thing we can discuss is, we sent a broad email about just like different uh, data granularities. And right now it's using second data, so obviously 3,600 points per hour. So 3,600 points that we're looking back on. That obviously gets better the more granular the data is. And I think, we had a super extreme version of it when we were looking at the minute data, right? Because it's totally reasonable for there to be multiple jumps within a minute. We actually expect at least two. And we had a method that would at least allow, like, if it makes a jump that's two barrier widths tall, it would count that because it would adjust one, check again, adjust. But what it wouldn't capture is if it went down and then up, it would not capture that at all. And so I guess the question is what level of data granularity do we need to be confident that we're not missing a significant number of jumps, right? So like what's the probability that, and it goes way down as soon as we hit the second level data, right? Like the only type of capture that we would not be hitting is if it went like down, up, or up, down, right? Some sort of that before it went whatever. So I'm sure there's a way we can compute semi-rigorously, just like given our barrier with what the probability of it going down enough to trigger a down recalibration and up calibration within a second is, right? Because that's the only one we're missing is up, down, or down, up. And that's assuming we know, it kind of gets circular here, but assuming we know the standard deviation of the price movement relative just like the historic one, and the drift, we should be able to calculate that pretty easily. So like I'm sure we could actually get a pretty solid answer of like what's the probability that within our second our function went down and then up and we didn't catch it. Or some sort of Poisson process thing like we did in 410 of like, we're expecting 120 crossings in the past 3,600 things. So we expect 120 over 3,600 crossings per on average per iteration. So we make that like the mean, right? Like the lambda for the Poisson process stuff. So what's the probability that we get a down and up in the same interval, right?
Yeah, I wonder if we can even just add a constant to the barrier crossings that we come up with so that like the average is around, 120 or whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, like again, if we're expecting 120,
Right.
we should have an assumption of like how many we're getting on average per tick, so per second.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, it's
Right.
120 over 3,600. What are the odds that two of those fall in the same uh, section? That's probably easy to calculate, and then probably divide that by two because we don't care about down, down, or down, up, right? Because
Yeah.
we'd capture those.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
So
I
yours
think we
read.
can pull up our 410 notes and actually get a confidence interval that second level data is actually enough with 120 barrier crossings to not have
Okay.
that issue.
Yes, and that makes total sense because within a second, like you said, you could miss a barrier crossing because a second sounds like a short amount of time, but it's really not. You could have missed, like an up down or a down up. But the 120, I just want to be clear, is what I wouldn't say it's what we're expecting. It's just what we're calibrating to. We're
yeah.
calibrating to
Mhm.
the 120. It could be a lot more. I mean, if it's a volatile instrument, you could get a lot more than 120. Then we might have to rethink our calibration methodology. But right now, the reason 120 was chosen, it was just create a very easy number to say two crossings per minute, right? So 120 crossings an hour, two per minute. It seems like a reasonable starting point. You don't want too few. You don't want too many. Um, but we're just using that as a constant to calibrate back to what we should create our barrier with too. There's no expectation that there's going to be 120 within a given asset. It could vary a lot. Um, again, gamma capture is a work in progress. It's not a finalized thing by any means, but we needed a starting point. So you have to simplify first, and then kind of make things better. But yeah, afterwards, but the improvements that you're talking about that make a lot of sense, though. That makes a lot of sense to say, okay, maybe we should just use second data, but then kind of adjust for potential jumps within that instead of having to, when you use millisecond data, it's a lot of data points. First off, it's
Mhm.
120,000 a day kind of deals more, and that's a lot of data to. And that level of granularity, I don't think is necessary because unless you're the ultimately the high frequency trading guy, yes, anyone outside of that realm doesn't really, you could say a second data is reasonable